From Gone Girl to A Promising Young Woman to even the cult classic Cruel Intentions, there is a whole genre of good for her movies. But not all female rage is built the same, and while some help the protagonist, often this female rage harms them. So today, let's unpack why women and girls are often denied the feeling of anger, how female rage manifests, and how to reclaim that rage. For those that are new here, hello, my name is Ruth. I'm an accredited eating disorder specialist and trauma therapist, and this is my series Psychology on Screen, which unpacks the psychology of all your favourite on-screen characters. So if you like your pop culture with a sprinkle of psychology, hit the like and subscribe buttons to be notified when new videos arrive. If you've ever felt as a woman or a girl unable to express your anger or denied a platform to express that anger, you're not alone. In fact, for many women and girls, we are socialised from a very young age to ignore and suppress our anger, and instead swap it for something more palatable for the patriarchy like sadness or submission. And with that in mind, it's no real surprise that female rage manifests. All emotions need to be processed, and that includes anger. And some of our favourite female on-screen characters show us what happens when we suppress that anger for too long. Of course, the queen of female rage is Gone Girl's Amy Dunne. Now at its 10-year anniversary, Gillian Flynn's character remains so well loved as a complex woman on screen. But why? Amy, a woman emotionally neglected and abused by her narcissistic parents, turns to people-pleasing in her life to ensure that she will never again be rejected by anyone in the same way that they systematically humiliated and rejected her. This results in her entering a romantic relationship with another narcissist, Nick, as she plays the cool girl trope to try and win his affection, feeling truly too vulnerable to actually be herself around people who could reject and humiliate her. We see a very similar storyline in the new smash hit Sweetpea. After Rhiannon spent her childhood and teenage years bullied and tormented at school, she turns to people-pleasing as an adult in an attempt to stay emotionally safe. However, this only results in her becoming increasingly invisible to those around her, a fate she was so desperately trying to avoid. In both Gone Girl and Sweetpea, we see a cinematically explosive result to this people-pleasing and constant complying and surrendering to other people. They end up turning to violence to try and process this pent-up female rage, which off-screen is actually statistically quite unusual, with men continuing to be the significant proportion of violent offenders. I think in both Amy and Rhiannon's experiences, we really empathise with these complex characters. Whilst we might not agree with the end result of what they do with that female rage, we can really see why it built up in the first place. Both protagonists were emotionally abused and bullied. Amy by her parents, Rhiannon by her school peers. This means that later in life they turn to people-pleasing, complying and surrendering to the needs of others as a means to attempt to stay safe from further emotional harm. People-pleasing is actually an extremely harmful but common coping mechanism I see women and girls develop. In fact, I would honestly say it's probably the most common coping mechanism I see. People-pleasing builds on harmful gender ideas of femininity and womanhood, encouraging women and girls to be pretty, pleasing and perfect. But it will come to no surprise to many of you to hear that this coping mechanism generally results in resentment. With people-pleasing, our own needs are being consistently going overlooked and unmet, and this can really build a rage within us. These characters in many ways are on-screen metaphors of how female rage can feel psychologically. Another trope we see on screen is female rage channeled as vengeance. Levels of violence against women and girls are at epidemic levels here in the UK, and the statistics are likely to be even higher due to the huge number of cases that go undisclosed and unreported. That, I think, is why many women turn to revenge as their good for her movie, because it's a cathartic sense of justice that they might not have actually been able to get in real life. Legal and policing systems not only continue to let down women and girls across the world, but often also perpetrate the violence they claim they're trying to stop. One of the best examples for me as female rage as vengeance is Emerald Fennels' first movie, A Promising Young Woman. By the way, if you want a psychology breakdown of her second movie, Saltburn, I'll leave the link below. I can't go into too much detail of this movie without fear of this movie being completely demonetised, but the film centres around a woman getting revenge for a friend she lost to gender-based violence. However, as Emerald wanted to make this movie realistic, While she does get her revenge at the end of the movie, it comes at a cost of her own life. As we noted, legal and policing systems are messy here in the UK, and statistically survivors do not get the support or justice they so truly deserve. As somebody who works in psychology, who's helped on many of these cases in court, I can say honestly that it's rare that we win one, even when there's staggering evidence against the perpetrator, because of the way the legal system is set up. It really doesn't cater to cases of gender-based violence. So often we see perpetrators walk free. I think these good-for-her vengeance movies can be cathartic, but they're also sad, as whilst the protagonist generally gets their justice in a way, they're almost always harmed in the process. We actually also see this in Amy in Gone Girl. She ends up staying married to Nick in a toxic relationship, which honestly I don't think is good for her. A very controversial figure to bring into this dialogue is Kathryn from Cruel Intentions. Justice for Kathryn. Painted as the villain throughout the whole movie, Kathryn perfectly articulates her experience as a young woman when she says,
"Do you think I relish the fact that I have to act like Mary Sunshine 24/7 so I can be considered a lady?"
Although Sebastian commits terrible acts throughout the whole movie, he is for some reason redeemed by the end and evangelised by falling in love with Annette and then losing his life trying to protect her. Whilst yes, we see Kathryn make some terrible judgment calls in the movie, we also see that she is playing these games as an outlet, as a way of coping. She has to consistently uphold this mask of Mary Sunshine and is never truly able to express herself as a young woman. We actually see her project this internalised female rage onto the women around her. And often these women are able to be more authentically themselves because they fit into societal moulds of femininity or youth, in ways Kathryn doesn't, which is absolutely okay, but society doesn't think so. Internalised misogyny is when we tear other women down to feel better about ourselves. When we're engaging in internalised misogyny, we're trying to be the pinnacle of the patriarchy, the apple of their eye. But in the process, we're going to lose the women around us, as instead we choose to compete with them to be the best woman. And of course, we see this female rage backfire onto Kathryn, and Sebastian walks away scot-free. So if revenge, violence and internalised misogyny are not the ways to deal with our female rage, then what is? Firstly, and this might sound really simplistic, but I actually need you to acknowledge that you are angry. Oftentimes our anger has been hidden under layers of different emotion, and it can actually take time to dig it back out again. In clinic, I generally see my female identifying clients coming in as quite vulnerable and people-pleasing initially. But as we dig under the surface, that vulnerability turns into anger because it was there all along. And rightly so. Without acknowledging our anger, we can't, number two, acknowledge what created it in the first place. Yes, we continue to live in a very patriarchal society, and terrifying and awful things are happening to women and girls around the world today. And if you add any little t traumas that you experience in your day-to-day life, that will quickly build up a store of anger. And again, rightly so. You have every right to be angry, you just haven't ever been given an outlet for it. So when we've acknowledged that we're angry and we know what's caused it, it's time to, number three, do something with it. Now, I'm not talking about doing an Amy Dunne, but what I am talking about is utilising that emotion. There are women and young women around the world today doing incredible things, who I suspect are often driven by healthy anger. They're ensuring that girls are educated around the world. They're battling climate change. They're pushing against toxic systems. And you might think, well, I can't do that on a day-to-day level, but there are micro acts of feminism that you can do in your day-to-day. You just need to figure out what they are. And to do that, figure out what's important to you. Is it climate change? Is it women's rights and body autonomy? Is it ensuring that all children get access to education? What is it?